Well, welcome back in once again, everybody, to another spectacular, interesting, informative, relevant, I can't think of any other adjectives,
That was pretty
edition
good.
of Pick Your Politics. I'm one of the hosts on the show, Dennis Silvers, alongside my very patriotic looking, you look great, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Stephanie Phillips, and she looks fantastic with the red, white, and blue and the stuff like that. It looks awesome. Anyway, we've got a wonderful show for you today. We've got a very interesting guest for you today, as we do every show, because we like to be informative. You know, the elections are coming up. Early voting, Steph, as you know, is going to be here before you know it. People have gotten their ballots mailed out. We hope you're taking time to look at the questions that are being presented, to vet the candidates, because you're going to be early voting or you're going to be in the booth marking your ballot. And there's a lot of stuff going on right now.
Oh my goodness, there is so much happening, so much corruption as well. We need to talk about.
Yeah. Well, you'd think we'd have President Biden on the way you're saying that with the corruption. But yeah, it's a very interesting nationwide, and especially here in Nevada, we've got some tight races. We're talking local races, we're talking regional races, even the state races, like for governor, tight.
The polls show they're very, very close.
Yeah.
So we'll see how this red wave and red tsunami that's expected. We'll see what happens. with
Yeah,
that.
so that's why you got to make sure that you get out and vote, because it's going to count more than ever. The whole idea of these people, as you know, the voter turnout here, Stephanie, in Nevada is historically low. So you got to get out to make a difference.
It is. It's very low, and we're only a month away.
I know.
It's coming up quick.
I know, and the commercials are flying back and forth. But anyway, we've got a great guest on for you today. Let me tell you a little bit about our guest. Colonel Mark Robertson is the Republican candidate for the U.S. House of Congress in Nevada's District 1. He's a retired colonel after spending 30 years in the military. Mark is also the recipient of the Bronze Star and the Medal of Valor. Very, very cool. Mark and his family have lived in Southern Nevada for almost 30 years. He's a graduate from BYU with a degree in finance. And also has earned an MBA. He is a certified financial planner and an adjunct faculty member at UNLV. So without further ado, let me get my teeth in right. Without further ado, let's bring up our special guest, Mark Robertson. And Mark, thanks for taking time out. I know you're busy pounding on doors and going here and campaigning, because it's going to be here. But we appreciate you coming on the show. And first of all, thank you for your service, by the way. Absolutely terrific. So let me start off and ask you, what got you involved? What wanted to make you involved in politics?
Hey, thanks for having me, Stephanie and Dennis. I really appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, so what made me do this? This is the first time I've ever run for office. This is not a bucket list of mine. This is not something that I always thought I wanted to do. But I don't like the direction of our country. I don't like this headlong dive into socialism. And I want my children and my grandchildren to grow up with the same freedoms and opportunities I had. So 22 months ago, my wife and I prayed about it and decided that I could no longer just sit back and hope that somebody else does something about it. And so we decided to run. At that time, I sold my business and quit my job, and I've been doing it full time now for 22 months.
That I commend you for that, because I don't know if people realize running for office is really tough.
Yep.
It's 24/7. It's out meeting and greeting, shaking hands, kissing babies, and trying to raise money, most importantly. But I got to tell you, Mark, you picked a tough one, because the woman that you're trying to defeat, it seems like she's been in place for a million years.
Well, she has, but they redrew the boundaries. The first congressional district used to be nearly 70% Democrats.
Right.
When they redid the boundaries, though, it's now only 36% Democrat, meaning it's 64% Republican and Independent.
Awesome.
We have our best shot in decades of taking back this seat.
That's awesome. Yeah.
How much do you think, being the service that you have provided us in the military, how much of an advantage, if any, do you think that is?
Well, I think so. I think people respect that. In the primary, there were 8 Republicans who ran, 8 quality Republicans. And I'm proud to say we did not fight amongst ourselves. In fact, the other 7 are now supporting me in the general election. But during that primary, I never advertised. I didn't advertise on TV or radio. I didn't even send those mailers to people's mailboxes. And yet I won by nearly a 2-to-1 advantage over the closest competitor. And I did that by just talking to people, and then people talked to their friends. It was a real grassroots effort. And I think people do appreciate military service.
Oh, no doubt about it.
For sure they do. And we need new blood in DC.
Yeah,
For sure. We've
big
had
time.
people, they're ancient in Congress, so we need a whole overturn there. So what do you think about term limits, speaking of that, Mark?
Yeah, so I've signed the term limit pledge. I don't think the founders of our nation ever envisioned a career politician, a permanent political class. When President Biden brags about being in D.C. for 50 years, I think he ought to be embarrassed that he's been in D.C. for 50 years, that he's never had to live under the laws that he wrote. So I'm all for term limits. I think it would go a long way in solving some of the problems that we have.
That's awesome. And the longer they're there, it seems like more corruption happens. It seems like they become self-serving. They line their own pockets, and then they don't get a lot done.
Right.
Like, Biden really hasn't done much over there except help destroy our country at this
except
point.
go the wrong way,
Yeah,
right.
right. So with all of the latest stuff with OPEC and our oil reserves being sent out of our country and being used and depleted, what is your opinion of all of that that's going on right now?
Well, it's just a travesty that on day one of the Biden administration, he shut down the American energy industry. What a mistake. We were already energy independent. Countries like Russia and Venezuela and Saudi Arabia had no control over us. They had no leverage with us. But he shut down that energy industry on day one, and now we're suffering the consequences. We have to bow down to dictators in Saudi Arabia and Russia and Venezuela and beg them for oil. We should have never done that. What a misguided and short-sighted move that was for President Biden to shut down our industry. We need to get back to an all-of-the-above solution to energy and reopen our energy industries.
Yeah,
Do you think somehow
absolutely.
that was intentional, that they bring us to this point and bring the country at this, to our knees with energy? Do you think that they did that intentionally?
Well, I think they're so intoxicated with their Green New Deal ideas and this utopian society that they don't see the facts. They can't see reality. Of course, President Biden's mental acuity isn't what it used to be, or if it ever was. And so I don't know that he understood what the consequences of shutting down our industry would lead to.
Yeah.
But it's been a disaster for us.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. Mark, I'm down 100% with a lot of things on your platform, because you talk about, believing in the Constitution, the laws of the United States, the border situation. We need more cops. We need, public safety. What are you hearing from your soon-to-be constituents when you're walking and knocking on doors? What's on their mind when you talk to people?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I spent the last 22 months, and that's all I did was talk to the people in my district. And there's 5 issues they have. By far, the number one issue is economics. They're concerned with inflation, the cost of gas and groceries, and wages not keeping up. Number 2 is crime. They don't feel safe in their own neighborhoods. And closely related to crime is our southern border. They say we need to secure our border to stop the flow of guns, gangs, and drugs into our neighborhoods. Number 4 is failing schools. Nevada ranks 49th or 50 in math, science, and reading.
Yep.
Parents want choices for their kids. And 5 is water, the water shortages that we're facing, and the lack of a plan by the Democrats to do anything about it.
Yeah.
You mentioned the border. Have you been down to the border and seen actually what's going on down there?
Yeah, I can tell you, I've been to the border more than President Biden, and I'm not in charge of the
And
border.
Harris.
Yeah, and Harris combined.
Yeah.
That's right. And I'm not in charge of the border, but their policies have made every community in the United States a border community, and we're feeling it here. I have friends who have children who died of fentanyl. One dose. They weren't addicts. They weren't hooked on drugs. One of them, their daughter was was a college athlete, and she injured her knee, and she thought she was taking a pain pill, and she was dead by morning. It's
Wow.
tragic what's
Horrible.
happening because we haven't secured our border. We have got to do that.
Yeah.
I've heard a statistic the last couple of days. The leading cause of death in America, ages 18 to 45, is fentanyl,
It's fentanyl.
which is
Yeah.
horrific. I never had heard that or knew that before, and that's horrific.
It just
Yeah.
it's-
During this time of this little short interview, 12 Americans will die from fentanyl poisoning.
It's just
It is,
unbelievable.
just like you said, for that age group, more people have died of fentanyl poisoning than ever died of COVID. And look at our response to COVID. We need a response to this fentanyl poisoning, and it starts with securing the border.
Yeah, there is no doubt. Mark, once you get into the U.S. Congress, what can you do? And it's a very great, powerful position that you will have, but what can you do as an individual? Well, let's start out with keeping illegals out of Nevada. What can you do?
Yeah, so I've made the comment before that I am one of 435, and Dina Titus doesn't like that I say that. She says that it says that I can't get anything done. Well, actually, she doesn't like it because I'm telling the truth. I'm one of 435, but I represent the people of the 1st Congressional District. And so I will seek out other like-minded members of Congress, and together we'll join forces and we'll reach across the aisle. Doesn't matter what state or what party they're from. If they're looking for solutions on the border, on water, on whatever the problem is, I will work with other like-minded members of Congress to find these solutions.
Yeah, and she says it with a squeaky voice. That's what drives everybody nuts.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the first things that needs to be addressed when hopefully the Republicans take
Yeah.
back, power
Yep.
in Congress. Some of these things need to be rolled back, such as
Yeah.
the $80 billion that's going to the IRS to hire these 87,000 agents. Mark, can we get that turned around, and can we get rid of that?
Yeah, let me tell you how devious the Democrats were on this. That $80 billion for the 87,000 IRS employees, they put that in mandatory spending. They put it in the same category as Social Security and Medicare. Now, Social Security and Medicare are sacred funds that we
Right.
owe to our seniors.
Right.
And by putting it in mandatory spending means that it's much more difficult to defund that. And it would take a signature of the president, and President Biden is probably not likely to do that. That's how devious they were, that they put it on the same level as Social Security and Medicare. How devious they
Yeah,
were.
that is horrible. Mark, being a certified financial planner, you've probably got a leg up on things we could do to improve the economy, especially here in Nevada. What are some of your ideas?
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting the financial background. I do know how the economy works. I know what causes inflation, and I know how to balance a budget. And the cause of inflation, any freshman business student can tell you, it's a matter of supply and demand. And when supply and demand are out of balance, it leads to inflation. And we have supply out of balance because government policy shut down the economy. The government officials like to say COVID shut down the policy. COVID's a virus. It has no authority to shut down businesses. It was the government that shut down businesses.
Yeah.
That limited the supply of goods and services we need. And then they artificially drove up demand by injecting trillions of dollars of wasteful government spending into the economy. So the way to reverse inflation is to reverse those terrible policies. We've got to stop paying people not to work. We've got to give people incentives to go back and work in our factories and in our businesses. And then we've got to stop the printing, borrowing, and spending of money that we don't have. We've got to stop the wasteful government spending.
Yeah, that's what I keep
the way.
telling Stephanie. Get a job. Go back to work.
They're not being held accountable. My thing with DC, none of these people are being held accountable.
Yeah.
They're spending our hard-earned tax dollars. Just
Right.
complete waste. They're sending it to other countries when we've got all kinds of problems in our own country, but they're spending it in Ukraine and all these other places. How would you have voted on any of those spending bills that they've brought forward the last 18 months?
Yeah, and this is a bipartisan problem. Both parties, both the Democrats and my own party, the Republican Party, has not shown restraint in spending. I hope this last 2 years, where we, the Republicans, have been out of power, the Democrats have a monopoly on power. I hope that we've learned our lesson and we'll be back to being conservative and frugal and living within our means. I won't vote for packages that spend money that we don't have. We have got to reduce government waste and spending.
There
For
is.
sure. And speaking of lockdowns and all of that stuff, had you been in Congress during the COVID days and all of that, how would you have voted on the mandates, the vaccine, lockdowns? How would you have handled all of that stuff? Because that was devastating to our country.
It was devastating to our country, and Governor Sisolak made sure it was as painful as possible for Nevadans. And the evidence is now out. Those states and countries who did not lock down their economy, they didn't have any worse health record than those who did, but their economies are thriving. And you can see it was a mistake. It was a mistake to keep our children out of schools. I have 4 grandchildren that are in Clark County schools, and they're behind. 80% of Nevada children do not read or do math at grade level. So it was a huge mistake. Here's what I think the role of the federal government should be in these type of issues. They ought to give you and I, Americans, complete, honest, and accurate information, and then allow us to make our own choices. My wife and I chose to be vaccinated. That was our choice, but we shouldn't impose that on somebody else. So give us the accurate information, then give Americans the freedom to make their own decisions.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's well said. Our special guest today on Pick Your Politics is Colonel Mark Robertson, who was a candidate for U.S. Congress in District 1. And Mark, is it possible in this country to have good elections? And what I mean by election integrity, that seems to be the hot potato today. People are talking about election integrity. Is that out of the realm of possibility, Mark? And what can you do to help that along?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the message ought to be to people: go vote. I won't want the message to be, oh, I shouldn't vote because my vote's not going to count. No, the message should be, go vote. Let's make sure we turn out in excess of the margin of fraud. And Nevada has 3 of the worst election security laws in the nation. First, they ignored 80% of the people who said we ought to have voter ID. There's few things that Americans agree on, but 80% of Americans say that we should have voter ID.
Yep.
Then we need to get rid of universal mail-in and rid of third-party ballot harvesting. All 3 of those invite fraud in our system, and we've got to get rid of them. But the message should be, go vote. Your vote won't count if you don't go
If you
vote.
don't vote.
So go vote.
That's true. Yeah, it's better to vote than not. I want to talk about January 6th with you for just a minute. I was reading there's still 35 or 36 prisoners still in the DC jail. And these people have been held over 18 months. Their due process has been violated, their constitutional rights violated. They haven't had a right to a speedy trial, no bail hearings. There, accounts and reports of some being beaten by the guards, and some of the congressmen and women had tried to go over there and visit those prisoners, and the warden wouldn't let them in, and all this that has gone on. And I just feel like there's got to be something that our government and our elected officials can do to get these prisoners out of there. I mean, a lot of them are being held for basically trespassing.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't have weapons.
Right.
It just seems overkill, and it seems like they're just acting like communists at that jail, and these judges are not allowing bail hearings. They're not allowing trials to move forward, and it's an atrocity. What do you think can be done, or what can be done to help these people?
Yeah, I don't have any personal knowledge of the things that you've said, though I've heard about them in the news media. Here's what I do know. I am a law and order kind of guy. We are a nation of laws. There's one thing that I agree with that Pelosi says, and that is that nobody's above the law. I wish she would apply that to the 2 million people that have crossed our borders illegally. I wish she would say that about those rioters, the BLM rioters who trashed our stores and burnt down government facilities. We need to have equal protection under the law. If somebody breaks the law, they'll be held accountable. But it ought to be fairly done. There's a reason that Lady Liberty is blindfolded. Justice is supposed to be blind. It shouldn't be based on politics or somebody's race or gender or political persuasion. And it does not appear that that's what's happening with those who trespassed the Capitol on January 6th, and compared to those who burnt down and looted our cities during the BLM riots.
So you think we have a two-tier justice system in this country?
It sure appears that way, and we've got one of the reasons that it's been rampant the last 2 years is the Democrats control the entire process. The Republicans aren't able to hold hearings and hold the administration accountable for these infractions. And so we need to break up that monopoly in D.C. We need to take back Congress so that we can reinstate the checks and balances that our founders envisioned in the Constitution.
Yeah, no doubt. Mark, are you very confident of a red wave coming like all of the other Republican politicians that you see on the news, on Fox and other stations? They're very, very confident. In fact, I was telling Stephanie, I read or heard somewhere where a political writer said, you know what? The Republicans are underestimating how well they're going to do in the midterms, which was kind of nice to hear. But are you confident about that?
Yeah, so I'm an optimistic person by nature, and I'm feeling confident and optimistic about this election and the future of our country. And that optimism is founded in talking to people. 24% of the voters in my district are Hispanic. And as I talk to the Hispanic members of my community, they are realizing more and more that their values are aligned with the Republican Party.
Yeah.
As Ronald Reagan once said, Hispanics are Republican, they just don't know it. And as the Hispanics move in our community, so will the election. And I see them more and more realizing that they align with the Republican and conservative values.
I want to ask you about the FBI for a minute. We've seen the raid on, unprecedented raid on President Trump. Also, they were working with, apparently, Facebook, by Zuckerberg's own admission, to suppress and censor the information about the laptop and, all of these things, and the alleged corruption, of the Biden family working with Ukraine and all these things. So a conservative group now filed a lawsuit this week against the FBI for these things. Do you think that, I'd like to get your opinion on that, and also, would you vote to repeal Section 230?
Yeah, excellent questions and very good observation on what's going on. Yeah, and once again, this goes back to the fact that the Democrats will not hold themselves accountable. There have been no investigations, no congressional hearings on any of these apparent improprieties. And that's one more reason we need to take back Congress so that we can start investigating all of these reports of the FBI. And I personally, because of my 30 years in the military, I wanted an investigation on our departure from Afghanistan. But I'd put all of those things in that category that the Democrats won't hold themselves accountable. We need to get in there so we can hold the administration accountable for the things that they're doing.
What do you think takes precedence? Because if we go back to just the COVID stuff, and the mandates and all these people that lost their jobs, they
Yep.
lost their businesses.
Yeah.
And all the lies that they told, the CDC now, all that stuff's coming out. And there
Yeah.
was a bunch of lies told. Fauci, we've got the withdrawal from Afghanistan, the FBI. There is so much. What do you think takes precedence, and what do you think should be done first?
Well, fortunately, there are many committees in Congress, and if the Republicans take back the House, the chairman, the people who hold the gavel in those committees, will be Republicans, and we don't have to take this one at a time. We can begin investigations immediately on all of these things. I find it interesting that Dr. Fauci decided to resign. It's obvious that the Republicans are going to take over in Congress, and he decides his 700-year reign in the Congress in Washington, or however long he's been in Washington, that his reign needs to come to an end.
Right.
I hope we can still call him back as Citizen Fauci to answer for what he's done to the United States.
Yeah,
It might take a subpoena or two, but I'm sure he'll be encouraged.
I think
come
he just got tired of making deposits into his bank account. Mark, in an ideal world in Congress, where would you like to be committee-wise, and why?
Yeah, so I have a natural interest in our House Armed Services Committee and in financial services. That's where my business is in financial services. But I have a passion for education and workforce. And so I have a strong desire to be on the Education and Workforce Committee and also the Natural Resources Committee. Nevada has North America's largest lithium deposits, and we have mining interests. But it's the Natural Resources Committee that will address the water issue in the western states. So those four committees I have a strong interest in being in.
That's those are two important ones. You mentioned water, and obviously that is a concern of everybody here, especially in southern Nevada. Does that mean you'd kind of be a little skeptical? Not skeptical, but you'd want to limit growth. You'd want to limit businesses coming here because all these people use water, Mark. So how do you get around that?
Listen, we have attacked our water issue, and we've been a leader in conservation. I'm not going to limit growth. Do you know, think of 20 years. Think of the last 20 years. How many people have moved to Southern Nevada in the last 20 years? Our population has nearly tripled in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And do you know, we use less water today than we did 20 years ago. My opponent 20 years ago proposed a ring around the valley to stop growth, which has been a job killer.
Yeah.
And we've proven that we can grow our economy, grow our population, and not use more water. And the reason we haven't had to use more water, and we're not even using our full allocation from Lake Mead, from the Colorado River right now. And because of that, we've refilled our underground aquifers.
Uh-huh.
Every drop of water that goes down a drain in southern Nevada is treated and dumped back into the Lake Mead and reused. In California, every drop of water that goes down a drain is treated and dumped into the Pacific Ocean, the same ocean they say is rising.
Wow.
In Congress, we ought to make sure that not one drop of the Colorado River ever makes it to the Pacific Ocean.
Yep.
We should save it all for human consumption in the 7 western states.
Yeah.
And I think California is probably using more than they should, more than their share, and that's why they're not coming to the table to renegotiate that deal, and so the feds have to step in. So we'll see
agree.
how that plays out. But when you said gavel, it reminded me, when you guys take over the House, you'll have to vote on a House majority leader. So I wondered who you think is going to be at the top of that list, and I've also heard rumblings of people nominating President Trump for that position. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I will support whoever the Republican caucus nominates to be Speaker of the House. Fortunately, we have a strong bench in the Republican Party. A strong bench not just for Speaker of the House, but a strong bench for a presidential candidate in 2024. I am very optimistic about the future of our party and the leadership that's on our bench in our party. We have very intelligent and talented people to lead our country.
What do you think of President Trump running again? Do you think he's going to run in 24?
I think he will. I don't have any inside information on that. I'm not in a position to know, but I think he made it. He's hinted enough that makes it clear that he would like to do that. But I don't have any information to know if he will.
Do you think President Biden should consider himself a candidate for next election when so
I hope
many
so.
people?
I hope so.
I like that.
Yeah, either him or Kamala. Let's
Yeah,
hope one
good
of them
answer.
decides
That's a good
Yeah.
answer because I know
or
there's
Bernie or AOC. Let their
Oh, my-
bench. Let's let their bench.
yeah, it's just absolutely incredible. That would be a story,
Yeah.
whoever got on board.
I wanted to touch on, before we let you go, I wanted to touch on the Second Amendment because that's a big thing. They want to take away ARs and high capacity magazines. They've got red
Yeah,
flag laws.
yeah.
They just kind of boosted that. What do you think about all of that? What's your position on that, Mark?
Yeah, so I'm a strong advocate of the Second Amendment. When it says "shall not be infringed," it's exactly what it means. And when the founders of our nation put the Second Amendment in there, it wasn't to protect hunters; it was to protect citizens from an over-intrusive and demanding government. We were fighting England at the time for our independence, or we had just liberated ourselves from England, and so I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. Now there are some things that some common sense things that I agree with. For example, I commanded a training company at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Every 9 weeks, we got a new crop of 18-year-olds. And on day one, we didn't hand them an M16. We first gave them training on how to use a weapon, the safe direction to point a weapon, the safety features of the weapon, and only after they'd received some training did they get a weapon handed to them. And the NRA for decades has been an advocate of safety training.
Right.
When I was in junior high, I took an NRA hunter safety program, and so I think gun advocate groups are all for training, and so am I.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
awesome.
Yeah.
My son went to basic training in Fort Jackson.
Oh,
So,
excellent!
yeah.
Thank you for his service.
Thank you. Thank you for yours.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Mark, I think it would be very interesting if you told our viewers about the different theaters you were in when you were in the military in the different countries and how you came about to get the Bronze Star and the Medal of Valor, because I think that's awesome.
Yeah, so I served in 10 different foreign countries, including combat zones in Afghanistan, Kuwait, and Iraq. In fact, in Iraq, I served with my own son, Stephanie. My,
Oh.
my, my son joined the Army, and I had the honor of swearing him in. And in 2010, he came down on orders for Iraq, and I immediately looked for an opportunity to serve in Iraq with him, and I did. It was a real honor for me, a real terror for my wife. She had both her husband
Yeah, and her son.
and her son
Yeah.
and her son there. Yeah, and it's not you won't find military members bragging about any medals that they received. They're very humble about that because there's very few things that we in the military do as an individual. It's really a team sport in the military, and we're supporting ourselves. And I was fortunate to serve with many brave young soldiers, and I'm both men and women, and I'm so grateful for that association and that experience that I've had.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. That's very well said, and I agree with you. What will you do though in Congress, because you keep hearing about the military today being so underfunded? Number one, what can you do to increase money to them? And secondly, do you have a particular branch of service that needs more money than the others, Mark?
They're unfunded and woke.
Yeah,
Let's add
and
that
woke.
in there too.
Yeah.
Let's get
Yeah.
your opinion on that too.
Yeah,
Mark.
that combination. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll talk about the wokeness first. I would relish the opportunity of being able to ask General Milley, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, ask them where their priorities lie. Is it with gender identification, or is it with defending the people of the United States, being prepared to fight and win Americans' wars? That's why we have a military. It's not for all this social engineering.
Right.
And we've got to get rid of the social engineering. The military has been a wonderful place. Soldiers don't see each other as black, brown, yellow, and white. They just see green. We're all green. You don't care what the religion or the gender or the national origin of that person in the foxhole. And it's a wonderful environment, and we should not wreck that with this social engineering that's been going on.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, we definitely need to fund our military and be ready, because we hear Putin talking about, striking us and nuking us. Nuclear war and all of this. And we've got
Crazy.
North Korea. So we
Crazy.
don't know. And Iran. We don't know where it's coming from.
There's very few things that the Constitution says that the federal government should be involved in. Very few. The founders envisioned a very limited central government. But two things that they are responsible for is raising an army and maintaining a navy. Now, by extension, the Air Force and the Space Force and the Marine Corps are in there too. That's one of the primary responsibilities that the states created a federal government. And we need to take that responsibility seriously, adequately fund it to keep us the greatest military power the world has ever seen.
And you talk to people and you say, what do you think about President Biden being our commander in chief? And all you get is raising their eyebrows.
Yeah. It's scary, actually. It's scary.
Well, it's another investigation, another hearing. I'd love to be able to ask the senior military leaders about our disastrous departure from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
I was in Bagram Air Force Base. I've also been to Fort Knox, Kentucky, where we keep our gold. And I can tell you that Bagram Air Force Base is more secure than Fort Knox. It was such a huge mistake to abandon that base and to do it in the middle of the night without even telling our NATO allies that we were leaving. It was just, I got to tell you, Russia would not be in Ukraine right now had we not exited Afghanistan the way we did. But Putin saw this weakness in President Biden, and he decided he could go in and take whatever he wanted because Biden is weak. Yeah. And that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan showed the world his incompetence.
And same thing with Iran. They think that they don't have to answer to anybody now, and they can continue on with their nuclear progression and all of these things, and they're trying to get back into that deal. We should have kept those sanctions in place.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a huge mistake by the Obama administration, and Biden was part of that. And now he's bending over backwards to try to please the Iranians at the expense of our closest allies in the Middle East, Israel.
Right.
Israel says it's Israel and Saudi Arabia and the nations around Iran, they should know better than we whether or not we should enter this deal. And they say, we should not. We certainly shouldn't be having Russia negotiate on our behalf. How ridiculous is that?
That whole thing is a joke, and Obama started all of that getting away from Israel, and they're our greatest ally. And he destroyed that relationship, in my opinion. Totally. And now, Trump restored that, and they just think the world of Trump and everything that he did for and with Israel. And now it seems to be being destroyed again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we can't lose that. As a U.S. Congressman, Mark, you work with, I say work in a loose sense, but get to know the governor of the state of Nevada. Did you see the debate between Sheriff Lombardo and Steve Sisolak, and what was your impression of it, and where do you think that Governor Sisolak has fallen down?
Yeah, I did not see the debate. I'm pretty busy on my campaign, and I don't want to take anything for granted, so we're not slowing down. But I am a full supporter of Joe Lombardo. He and I have spent a lot of time at the same events throughout this campaign, and I've got to see him intimately and up close. And he's a genuine person. He has a heartfelt love for the people of Nevada, and I support him with all my heart. And Governor Sisolak has got to go. It seems to me that Governor Sisolak takes his marching orders not from the people of Nevada, but from Governor Gavin Newsom. That Sisolak won't make a move unless Governor Gavin Newsom gives him permission to do it. We need a government that's responsive to the people of Nevada.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Before we let you go, Mark, will you tell everybody how they can get in touch with you, how they can get to your website and make a donation to you, and then any upcoming events that you have coming up?
All right, you bet. So the website is www.robertsonforcongress. That's the word for, F-O-R, robertsonforcongress.com. And from that website, you can volunteer. We're knocking on doors. I've got an army of volunteers out knocking on doors and making phone calls. There's also a link if you want to make a donation. We've got several exciting opportunities this week. Tomorrow evening, Senator Ted Cruz is in town to do a rally for me, and the information for that rally is we're posting it on Facebook so that people can see it currently, but it's at 6:00 tomorrow evening at Senator Cruz, and then on Saturday, we're having at 10 in the morning. It's the BYU Notre Dame game, and we're having a bit of a rally at 10 in the morning on Saturday. But there's lots of events planned, and we announce them all on our Facebook and Twitter accounts, and we send out a monthly newsletter. A weekly newsletter, and people can subscribe to that newsletter at my website.
That's awesome. Where is the event tomorrow with you and Senator Cruz, Mark?
Yeah, it's at something Roadkill Grill. Let me pull it up there.
That's in the north part of town. Yeah,
it's up in the north part of town. It's at the John Mull's Meat and Roadkill Grill. It's on Tom Boulevard, THOM Boulevard, in the north part of town.
And what time does that start?
It starts at 6:00.
Awesome.
And people come out. They'll get to meet my wife. She's going to introduce me, and they'll get to meet the man of the hour there, Senator Ted Cruz.
That's awesome.
That's an awesome place. That'll be fun. I've been up there several times.
You've been up there?
Oh, great.
Yeah.
It's not in my district, but I've had lots of people in my district saying they're going to make the trek over to the north side to be there.
That's great. That's great. Well, we wish you all the luck in the world with your campaign. I think you would be great. Anything that Steph and I could do, please reach out, and we'd be happy to help you out, because we need a change in Congress with some new people like yourself.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
Well, great. Well, something you could do is convince Dina Titus to come on your show and debate me.
Oh, I would love that. All right, we've sent out a couple. Steph has sent out a couple of invites to some people to come on and debate, and they go, no,
they don't want to though.
Yeah, Channel 8 scheduled a debate, and I showed up. She didn't. You might recall that she's got an ad running right now that ends with her saying, "I'll never back down from a tough fight."
Right.
Okay.
But she won't debate me. That's just too tough.
That is incredible.
We'll send out. I'll make sure and send out that invite, Mark, and I'll CC you on it, and we'll see what the response is.
We got it.
Right.
We got
Excellent.
it. Again, thank you very much, Mark. Good luck to you, and we'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Mark Robinson, everybody. Robertson. He's running for Congress in Nevada's District 1, and Dina's got to go.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
She's been there too long.
Forever.
What has she done? And now that they've redrawn those lines, it sounds like he's got a
He's got a good chance.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very articulate. He's very definite, got some great ideas. Like I'm saying, I looked at his platform with school choice and the border and the Constitution and the cops, and I'm down with all of that.
Yeah, I think he's going to make a great congressman and make some changes there and help our state.
Absolutely.
So.
All right, for Stephanie Phillips, I'm Dennis Silvers. That's going to wrap it up for this edition of Pick Your Politics. Remember, vet your people. It's getting close, and more importantly, get out and vote. So we'll see you back same time, same place. So long, everybody.
See you later.